Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic ReCon Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask, joined now by, I'm going to call him a friend. I mean, all it takes is one phone call to become a friend. And we had a heck of a conversation. This is Tim Francis. Many of you have probably heard of Tim. He has traveled, and I know we're going to get into this, Tim, but you've traveled all over America and internationally as well, right? Giving presentations to parishes. In fact, can you speak to that a little bit? What it is that you do, and kind of the focus?
Yeah, I can speak a lot about that. I've been doing it a lot. It's easy to talk about something you're passionate. Thank you for what you do, by the way, Eddie. Yeah,
Oh,
really.
thank you, Tim.
Yeah, it's nice to work together, brother. And so, kind of a long story short, that we can break it down is that I grew up in a town of about, I don't know, 5,000 people. Everybody knew everybody. I was one of six, five boys and a girl. We went to church every Sunday because we had to. A town in near Dayton, Ohio. It's a small town called New Carlisle, Ohio, near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's where my father retired. Anyways, I started going out to the bars and stuff. I grew up in the 80s where the parents, I don't know, I mean, we had a great household, but when you were gone, they didn't pry too much. And so we'd go out, and when I was 15 or 16, my brother was giving me his ID, and so I was getting into the bars, and I thought this is a fun time. And I was just into football, sports, and so what happened is I went up to Ohio State, and I don't think I ever went to church like that I remember, except once a month I came home to see mom and dad because I was in the Air National Guard. That's how I paid for college, and so I'd have to come home to the guard base and eat with mom and dad, go to mass, and we just never talked. I probably lied if I thought about it. If my mom said, "Did you go to mass?" I just kind of blew it off. I wasn't anti. It just, you know what I mean. You're just in the culture, and
Yep.
got into the party scene. And so what happened is I went down to Texas. And again, a real long story short is I got invited to a big mega church, non-denominational mega church. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. I met who eventually became my wife. I met her in a bar. She had no religious upbringing at all. And we started going to this mega church. And my mom started sending me tapes and tapes and tapes. And I'm sure we'll break that down. But one of the tapes she sent me was called Signs from God, Science Test Faith. And I think 28 million people watched that back in 99. She, on a VCR tape, she sent it to me. And I witnessed the lady have the stigmata, and I'd never heard of such a thing. And I thought, wow, that's wild. And it caught my attention, which was my mother's hope. And over the course of 10 years, I got to the bottom line with it. Let's put it that way. And so for the last 12 years, ever since 2009, I've been putting together, hosting, and organizing talks at parishes and conferences where I could actually allow people to experience what took me, I don't know, many, many years to come back to the Catholic faith. And so that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That was right through it. Okay. So now we're going to go back a little bit. So in the teenage years and into college, what do you think drew you? What do you think it was that was in you that would just be so naturally drawn away from church?
Well, you and I both know I coach football, and so I just got back from football practice tonight, and I was talking to a young man's father asked me, "Will you talk to my son? My son messed up." And over the weekend, and would you go find out and have him confess what he did and talk to him? So I said, well, "What's up, man? What'd you do?" And he says, "Man, I got caught, but I was going to steal something." And I said, "Look, man, here's the deal. There's three reasons that would happen: the world, the flesh, and the devil." And I said, "What does that mean to you?" I said, "What do you think the flesh means?" And he was good. He goes, "Yeah, my natural tendency to kind of just please myself." I said, "Yeah, man." I said, "What about the world?" He goes, "I mean, your influences, your music, the people you hang out with, you hang around, right?" And then I said, "The devil." And I said, So I said, understand. And so that's the answer to your question. What made me do that? Come on, you become you hang around. It's not complicated. I mean, I was a fun, still am social, um, love sports, just wanted to have fun. Obviously, Catholic Mass, for me growing up was boring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, we didn't talk about it in the 80s. No one told me, I might not have listened anyways, but no one sat down and said, hey, do you understand this really is Jesus Christ? I may not have listened, but I tell you what, had I witnessed a lady have stigmata, I might have been curious to find out what that was all about.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny, you talk about mass being boring. Someone invites you to a non-denominational megachurch. Was it the invite that you think kept you there? Like in other words, the fact that someone was so kind to invite you in, or was there something about that experience that meshed with where you were and how you, I don't know. I think we talked about this. There's this element of entertainment that is rampant in mega churches versus what you were describing in the Catholic Church, let's say.
Well, of course, the Catholic Church is old and ritualistic, and you know, uh, for the most part, people are older compared to the mega church environment. So, I mean, look, it's on purpose. I mean, they know exactly what they're doing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. My wife and I, we went from the bar scene to the Bible scene, and what I mean is, we were hanging out with people that after hours, happy hours, and going to parties, going to after hour clubs, and you know what happens then. It's pretty empty. And so when you get around a bunch of people that are trying to live virtuous lives, especially when you're getting to a stage to being married and maybe having a kid, it's inviting. Like, it's really inviting. And I happen to be in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and there's some big guns, if you will. Like, there's a guy named Tommy Nelson, from Denton Bible, and we used to go every Wednesday night, and they were all young people. I'm talking 2000, college age and just after college age and college age kids, and young adults. And I'd never seen people so fired up about this Jesus in the Bible. We never were like that in the Catholic Church, right? So I wasn't against it. I thought, wow, man, is this real? Like, truly. And one of the guys from that non-denominational church gave me a book about the approving Jesus Christ from history. And I thought, wow, that's impressive, because I don't want to just do something because you guys are emotional about it.
Yeah. So did that get you out of the bars completely? You said from the bar scene to the Bible scene. Was it what occurred? Like what would it take for you to just kind of drop that vice?
I remember, man, I was with this good group of guys. We were reading the Bible together, and reading the Gospels. And I remember reading it said, people who live like, I think it's Galatians, and it said people who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. And it said fornicators, drunkards. I'm going, what? I'm like, that was our college experience, right? I'm like, I remember asking my mom, honest truth, and I like, Mom, is getting drunk a sin? I seriously did not know that. I mean, I mean, not that I would have, like, and my mom was like a Mother Teresa lady. She's like, well, I mean, you can drink. I said, Mom, when I went to college, no, the whole point was just to get drunk. That was the reality, right? And I know for a lot of college kids that becomes to go out and party, go get nuts, get in a fight, get with whatever the case. So yeah, that really impacted me. And when I realized that there was evidence, Eddie, for Jesus Christ being a real historical person, and then I started listening to debates between William Lane Craig and all of these atheists and stuff, and I was really impressed that somebody could stand up and intelligently dismantle an atheistic view on the proof of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So I was okay. I'm all in. They told me the Bible's the Word of God, so we started doing a Bible study, and man, life was good, man, because my wife, the people you surround yourself with, if you're in a party atmosphere, they're your buddies until there's no longer a party, right? But when you start hanging out with people who are really truly seeking virtue, man, it's, as you know, I mean, it's it's an attractive thing. And so they do real well with that in the mega church environment, man, real well. Like home groups, right? I mean, small groups, getting together with people you can relate to.
Yep.
Stuff like that was really sharp.
Now, how long were you attending the non-denominational church?
Yeah, man, we got invited there in the late 90s and 97, 98. And in 2001, I think it was, my mom started sending me over the years these tapes from people who converted to the Catholic Church. And so I was able to organize a debate in my house between Father Mitch Pacwa and the leaders of Denton Bible.
Wow.
And then Tim Staples, he used to work at St. Joseph Communication, and I was able to snatch him up when he came in town, and he came over for about 2 hours, and I recorded it. I mean, they knew I was recording. I said, I want to record you, and they kind of hashed it out. So around 2001 or so, 2002, one or two, I had heard enough that I was going to come back to the Catholic Church, but my wife was not interested at all because she loved that new church. She loved her new friends. We had a great big group of friends our age, right? And Eddie, nobody was interested in that group of what I had discovered.
No one at the church cared about. Let me ask you this: was there an anti-Catholic approach, or was it more like we're not interested just because it's not the community that we know, it's not the Bible study? I can't fathom that. Or was there? I'm always curious about that. Like, who is actually opposed? Like, whoa, that's
yeah. In my opinion, I think that the new non-denominational churches, they don't front a real harsh opinion about the Catholic Church typically, from my experience. But they do have an undercurrent of messages that they say, for example, hey guys, I go right to God. I don't need one person between us.
Yep.
You know what they're saying.
Yep.
and they're well aware that 40 or 50% of the people in their church were baptized Catholic, that are lukewarm. They didn't know their faith. So they really cement that home, but they don't outright say. In fact, the opposite. Ed Young from Fellowship Church is where I went. He would say stuff like, I don't care if you're Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever, Catholic. He'd throw it all in the same loop. He said, it doesn't matter. It's all about a relationship. But then on the other hand, he would throw in these left hooks, right? Like I mentioned, I don't need anybody I go right to God, I don't need, about confession, about Mary, things like that.
Got it.
So yeah, and I don't think they're anti, but now the group that I was with, they were just completely innocent, for the most part, hungry, and it was just too deep for most of them to even want to go into. And I'm not like I'm smart. They didn't want to go further than what we were doing, which was read the Bible and tell me what it means to you.
To you, yeah.
Yeah. How does this grab you?
How does this grab you?
How did your week go this week? What are you struggling with? What can we pray over? Those are great things. But after once you know something, you can't unknow it. So I had listened to so many debates between the most educated Protestants and Catholics I could get my hands on. Excuse me. And once I did that, I just knew too much theologically to allow myself to sit through sermons or Bible studies that were not malicious, but just ignorantly distorting the interpretation of God's word.
Yeah, totally get that. Yeah, and I guess my question is related to and you answered it, the anti-Catholic thing. I think there's a difference between just making those statements, like you said, there's one mediator. There's a difference between those statements and just outright saying truly disparaging things about the faith. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because there's a big camp of people that find it much easier to investigate the Catholic Church when they have not been fed the anti-Catholic rhetoric. If they've heard things, like you said, that I would just call those general protests. I mean, obviously, part of the Protestant Church. But the people that kind of receive that pushback it seems much easier for them to investigate and to go a little bit deeper. So in your case, because of your upbringing and because what propelled you to go that far? You just said you had learned so much. It was
Yeah.
those tapes, obviously, but why were
Yeah.
you so intrigued to keep going into those tapes?
Yeah, it's a good question. So let's go back to college. In the late 80s, Scott Hahn's conversion tape was going around, and my mom gave it to all of his kids. I did nothing with it because I could care less about I didn't know anything about the Protestant Catholic thing. I didn't care. I didn't care about some book nerd. I don't mean that he is, but that was my
Yeah.
mind. I could care less. I was out for the fun, the party. So it's like, okay, who cares about this? But mom, okay, mom, thank you, sweetie. But now, fast forward 10 years, and I'm in a Bible church, non-denominational church. I'm getting serious. I'm getting married. So you're getting serious about your life. I wanted to take it serious. And my mom simply asked me, I want you to know what you're giving up. And so she said, I just want you to hear the other side. And so I said, sure, of course. I'm willing to hear. So when I heard the conversion stories, on the journey home, when I heard those, what I thought was, this is beyond the scope of my knowledge, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm a football guy, not a Bible guy. So what I need to do is I need to put smart people around me, kind of a Cliff Note version, and I need to hear them hash it out. And then I want to decide for myself slowly what facts, what evidence I see to be the most biblically and historically reliable. And so that's once I started going down that path, and maybe you can relate, it became a little bit of an addiction for me. I mean, I would listen to any debate, any apologetic, anything, any book you could give me. I was devouring them, And so the more, there's an old saying that if you read 5 books on any subject, you become an expert, right? So yeah, man. And so then now I came back intellectually.
Yeah.
But when I came back, it was like I remembered. People came to church late. And by myself, my wife wasn't coming. People came to church late and left early at the Catholic Church. At the Bible Church, they came early and left late. They had home groups. In the early 2000s, at the church I went to, in the Catholic Church, there was no Bible study. There was no young group of people reading the Bible. So it was very frustrating for me because everybody was against me, if you will, including my wife. But I had just read and heard too much to even consider not going down that path. Like either it's true or it's not. If it is true, I've got to go.
Yep.
Right. And we were going to the Catholic Mass in the mega church. And my kid at the time, I have 3 now, but my young son, he used to say, are we going to the fun church or the boring church? Because, he's talking about the Catholic Church or the other church. By God's grace, Eddie, today, that he's 22 and he prostrates himself in holy hour. He doesn't use a kneeler. He's sold out. He doesn't care about the fun stuff because he understands what's happening at the Mass, which, by the way, is my entire presentation. Anyway, so.
Well, no, I have to mention, even in my story at the end, I'm saying that what I thought was so boring, and all the homilies were boring. Everything, as a child, that's all I could picture it's just boring compared to the mega church that we were going to.
Of course.
And then I had an experience, and all of a sudden I'm back in Mass, whatever, 20 years later, I don't even know what the number is. And I realized, okay, this is the most magnificent word I've heard. It's beautiful in this church. It's anything but boring, because I then by that time had realized there's so much more. It's not this superficial thing that we see oftentimes. I've heard other people say that's when they're in their teenage years. They just see, oh, when are we going to get out? This is so boring. So what you're saying about your son just definitely hits home.
Yeah. We could talk about what you said there for quite a while, but
yeah. I also wanted to ask you about what was the first step when you said, I'm going to return? Did you go and speak to a parish priest? Did you even know what to do?
Yeah, I went and did a confession. That's right. I had heard and read enough to understand the power of that sacrament. And I wanted to receive the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And I came to believe that it was real. and that he was, really was Jesus Christ. And that was a huge, of course, a huge factor. I mean, obviously the issue of authority is the overarching large issue.
Yeah.
But the idea that I have a guy, maybe you've heard of him. I consider him a friend, an acquaintance, Zachary King. Have you heard of him?
No, I haven't.
He might be a good person for you to interview. He worshiped Satan for 26 years. So if you Google Zachary King, you can hear his talks. And he was a high wizard. And somebody gave him a miraculous medal. He had this conversion. And he travels across the country many times with exorcists and stuff, talking about the evil and how it works. He told my son and I one time, he said, people who worship Satan, he said, will pay people $5,000, a satanic coven. They'll pay people $5,000 for a consecrated host by a Catholic priest. And so they take it to a black mass and they desecrate Jesus and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but the point of that is that doesn't, they don't steal, and I don't mean this rudely, they don't steal grape juice and crackers from Fellowship Church, right? The Fellowship Church doesn't even teach that it is Jesus. So when I came to believe what the Satanists already knew, that it was Jesus Christ, right? I mean, there's, as you know, there's, it's either real or it's not. If it is real, you can't turn away because of entertainment. And I have to say, Saint Padre Pio is my favorite saint. I didn't live when he lived. He died in 1968, but what I understand is his mass, many years, was 3 hours, and he didn't have a homily. It was all about the altar. It was all about Jesus Christ offering himself as a sacrificial victim. So, of course, that shouldn't be fun. What should be fun about that,
Yeah.
right? But if you don't know that, if you think you're going to do a show, it's quite boring, especially if you compare it to a mega church environment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And let me say something for the megachurch people. I'm not bashing them by any means. It was a great stepping stone for me. I think they're doing incredible work. I think what they're doing is they're reaching people where they're at. I just obviously don't think they go near far enough. Now, what they would say is the pastors, hey, if you have a relationship with Jesus, how much further does it need to go? Right? That would be their thing. They don't, many times they don't want to go deep theologically. Many times the mega church environment, the ones I was at, Fellowship,
Sure.
they never wanted to go deep in theology.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I don't think it's taken as you bashing. I think we're just comparing the two and understanding that many people do use that as a stepping stone. There's no question about it. There are people that are fresh out of prison. They end up at a mega church, have a radical transformation. There's no denying that.
Yep.
But the key with all of these stories is if someone were to ask you, are you open to the Lord's will? How far will you go? And that's a question to all of us. How far?
Right.
Is there a boundary that's based on what you were taught at a certain age? And that's what I love about what your mom said. Are you willing to hear the other side? So if someone's pursuing the truth and they think that they are completely open to the truth, and then someone says, okay, what about the Catholic Church or Eastern Orthodox Church? And if someone just says, well, no, because of the Reformation or something. Well, to your mom's point, have you ever thought about hearing the other side? And that simple question, well, it did something for you. I think it does something for a lot of people just to have that posed to them. You know what I mean?
I do. And I legitimately do not believe first of all, I don't think it's as simple as many converts make it when you do when you actually listen to the best of the Protestants apologists out there and really listen to the objections and how they rebut the objections and listen to debates. It can be fairly complex. Okay. But I will say that I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts. I mean, we have a living faith. And, as Cardinal Newman says, it grows. Our understanding of it grows. You know what I'm saying? Of the original deposit of faith. And so I do think if you look at what is taught, what this organization believes and what this organization believes, and you say, I believe this because of these Bible verses, and I believe this because of these Bible verses, and then you look up all of the ancient Christians and you see not that they're universal, not that they all agreed, that's not true. But if you look at the mound of evidence, it's just overwhelming, toward the Catholic faith. I don't think anybody could legitimately do a study and say, yes, I see that most of the ancient Christians over time believe the Reformed Baptist view or believe the Pentecostal theology. I don't think it's even possible to do that if you're truly open, right? But so many people are sunk in to their group or to their church, or maybe their pastor. They're not willing to consider breaking those relationships, right?
Now, have you heard of people? I've mentioned this a few times on the show. Have you heard of those that are of Protestant backgrounds that are traveling to the early church and insisting that their theology is not only found at a moment in time, but is found consistently through, let's say, the first 1600 years? Have you heard?
No.
Okay.
And I would love to see the evidence. Truly, I would love to see the evidence, because I've never, ever, ever seen evidence to support the theology of any of the Protestant faiths. And I don't mean that rudely. And of course, non-denominationals will say, well, we're not
Yeah,
Protestant.
we're not Protestant. We're in a different
We're
group.
just Christian. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. Yeah, your roots are in Protestantism. The point is, you adhere to the Protestant truths.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would be my point as well. It's like, well, what's the basis of your theology?
It's like somebody saying, "Oh, we're not Amway. We're ABC Marketing Group." Your mother company is Amway, and
That's
your
right.
mother company is Martin Luther, and
That,
you broke off. And you may not know this, I'm
yeah.
sure, but trust me, you believe in sola fide and
That's what I was
scriptura.
going to say. Exactly. Do you
Of
believe
course you
in
do. Yeah.
faith alone, grace alone, scripture
And
alone?
you may not even know it. What you do know for sure is
Yeah.
your faith is based upon your Bible. That's what you know. In fact, most modern Protestants, frankly, they don't adhere to the Protestant Reformation at all,
Yeah.
because Martin Luther and Calvin had a high regard for history and councils and such. Modern Protestants would believe in what they call solo scriptura, not sola scriptura. Sola scriptura is the final rule of truth, the only infallible rule of truth, and the final determinant is scripture, not that tradition's bad. But today's Protestants,
So low.
non-denominationals,
Yeah.
it's so low. It's like, well, it's not the Bible. It's not the Bible. It's not the Bible. It's like goofball. There's a million things that aren't in the Bible. There's nobody doing a altar call in the Bible, right? And saying the sinner's prayer. I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah.
But,
No, but
there's
it's
a million
true.
things that aren't in the Bible, right?
No. You got to apply it to both sides for sure. Okay. So you're now back in the church. What was the experience like, if you remember, receiving the Eucharist, getting back into, I guess, parish life? I say back into it as if at that point you had not really been involved. So what did that look like, and how were you discussing the faith with friends, with your wife at that time, if you remember?
Well, here's how it actually went down.
Yeah.
In 1999, my mom sent me a tape. It's on my website, You Shall Believe. Everybody should watch it. It's nothing like it has ever been filmed in human history. So that's not an understatement.
Okay.
YouShallBelieve.com. Go to Watch Amazing Video. That's the tape my mom sent me on a VCR tape. I watched this lady have the stigmata, the wounds of Christ. I asked myself two questions: is it real, and what does it mean? I have no reference point. I didn't even know it had to do with the Catholic Church. I used to put it in your VCR. If I knew you, Eddie, I'd come over and put it in your VCR. It didn't matter if you went to church or not. It'd be like if you sent me a tape of Bigfoot. I go, you got to watch this. And everybody would say the same thing, always. And they still do today. Unbelievable. Is that real? How come I've never heard of that? This is what everybody says today, even now. So, anyways, I never found out. I called Fox. There was no book. There was nothing. I come back to the church intellectually. My wife and I are going to the mega church, the Catholic Church. She doesn't want to be Catholic. Nothing to do with theology, just about relationships. And my mother passed away. And then in 2009, some guy calls me out of the blue and he says, "Hey, yo, Tim, I was cleaning out my house." He said, "And you left a tape there." It's weird because guys don't normally care about it. They probably just throw it out. Women might do that, and he's not that kind. Somehow he just wanted, I don't know why. So I got with him, and it was my mom's VCR tape. And it was the tape of the lady that's on my website having this stigmata. So I Google and I find this book called Reason to Believe. Most people have never heard of it. It's not, but Catholic Answers doesn't promote it. EWTN doesn't promote it. Ignatius Press doesn't promote it. But I've never read a book like it in my life. And I got it from the guy who filmed the lady have stigmata. Okay, so now when I get that, oh my gosh, everything comes together. I realized that the vast majority of Catholics are ignorant, not stupid, ignorant. That's why 70 or 80% of Catholics who registered Catholics, I don't mean former Catholics, are not going to mass regularly. They're not bad people. They are completely ignorant. They don't know the first thing about what's happening at the mass. They're ritual Catholics. They've just done it, so they keep doing it once in a while, whatever. When I read that, that's when everything changed, Eddie. I started going to daily mass. Okay. My wife converted completely, and our kids, she started leading a Catholic homeschool group, which you have no idea how wild that is, because that's not where we came from. And I started traveling. I brought the guy who filmed the lady have the stick. Again, I have to say this. Nothing like this in human history has ever been filmed. I mean, that's amazing. And today, still, and so this famous investigative journalist, household name in Australia, was an atheist, became a Catholic because of this. I brought him to Ohio and to Texas so that everybody could hear the story, and that's what started me down this path. So then I started to really be involved. Okay, and really at the local parish level, I would have liked. I got involved in everything I could get involved in, but I started traveling so much. My wife was homeschooling. We'd get in a conversion van, and we'd be gone for a month. And she has a mortgage license, and I have an insurance license, so we have independent things we do. But it was wild, and so I would go parish to parish to parish to parish telling the story, and it just kind of grew. I didn't really mean to start something, right? I didn't know there was a thing called an apostolate or a ministry. And so to this day, if you go to my website, go to my website, youshallbelieve.com, and click on events. I think it's events, or get an event or something. And like, you'll see, I'm getting ready to go on the road here in about 2 weeks. And, I've got, lots of events, which I never tire of, allowing people to share this story. So you asked me about what happened. I just started devouring everything. Like, like there's so much stuff, right? And so I probably overloaded my family, right? My wife, my kids, right? I went to Medjugorje, I went here, I went this. We got to do bread and water fast every Wednesday and Friday. We got to, I probably overdid it, kind of thing. But so anyways, yeah, that's, if that answers your question, man. I mean, to this day, I go to daily mass. My understanding of how to pray the mass just evolved in the last 2 years with all this knowledge, and you read more and you read more. My understanding of how to actually partake and be active in the mass has just went to a whole new level. So I genuinely, it's not like you're like, okay, I can't, it's not like you're going, oh my gosh, this is going to be fun. Of course, it's not about fun, but I genuinely look forward to going to mass, because it's like somebody who likes to work out. It's like, the outcome. You may not feel like it, but after you work out, boy, now I go here, and it's not how I feel, but I know the grace that's been put on my soul, and I know how important it is for my family. Wow. And I mean, truly, I'm not out of the woods yet. My wife and I bring so many bad decisions from our past into our marriage, and you don't just wipe that clean. I mean, yeah, you get freed, but you bring all that stuff with you. And so the idea that we could stay married is beyond a miracle, with our backgrounds and our vanity and our just all the crap that the world that we attach to ourselves. So to this day, gosh, I could talk about this all the time, but I mean, the trappings of the enemy. I think I may have told you before. A friend of mine's an exorcist, and his book is so impactful to me. And what it shows me is, wow, without the mass, without the confession, without holy hour, without the rosary, without the sacramental and devotional life, my family's dead in the water, because the enemy's outside our door, and if we're not strong enough, we're constantly inviting them in.
Yeah. Oh, well said. So I'm assuming when you started traveling or throughout this whole ministry, to your point about the trappings, have you felt spiritual attacks?
Well, of course, people would say, "Oh my gosh, you've been trying." I've been doing it for 12 years, and what I've been talking about is bringing people to the realization that Jesus Christ is alive in the Holy Eucharist, the understanding of regular confession, the powerful benefits of Holy Hour, the Blessed Mother's intervention, all these things, right? So of course, people say, "Are you attacking?" I go, "Of course, the family. That's what the enemy wants to do: divide the country, divide the world, divide the family." And so division is the enemy's game. And so I have become aware, especially since reading Father Vincent Lampert's book on exorcism. I have become, in fact, I buy them by the droves and bring them to every event and sell them because I'm just such a believer in them now,
Yeah.
right? And I do I see it? Do I feel it? You see it very vividly if you're attuned to it, right? If you're walking in grace in the sacramental life and you're following with faith, you're doing your best and you're allowing the grace of confession, of mass, of Jesus. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, I live in you and you live in me. And when you're doing that, you're given such protection that you're able to visually see and recognize the trappings of the enemy.
Got it. Wow.
And it's always in my now Father Vincent said there's eight ordinary ways that people invite evil in their life. Eight ordinary ways. And this is a guy who's been an exorcist since 2005. And it's not about being possessed. Very rare is that going to happen. It's about the ordinary activity of the enemy, and recognizing that. And it's just coming through the portals of the media, right? Entertainment, all these things that are being brought into our house. And
Do you know what the 8 things are off the top of your head?
I'll give you three. Yeah, I do, but I'll give you three that I think are real practical for anybody raising kids
Yeah.
or grandkids or whatever. All right. One is broken relationships. Now, see, people are committing suicide by the droves because social media is making them feel like crap, right? And there's this old thing that says, I forgive him, but I'll never forget. Ooh, that's dangerous. Broken. See, we're made to have relationship, right? And what you do to the least of one, you've done to me. And so when there's a broken relationship of any kind, that's an entry point for the enemy. You're saying, "Come on in," because it's pride, right? It's pride. Another one is electronics of any kind. It could be arcade games. It could be your phone. It could be your social media, right? I mean, come on. I have Facebook, and I get messages from really attractive women that are probably robots because they take these gorgeous women and they send you friend requests. Well, there you go.
Yep.
All you have to do is say, "I want to see that picture," right? That's a trap. 99.9% of all entry points are temptations, right? There was another one that was on top of my head. Broken relationships, electronics. I can't remember offhand, but obviously any type of temptation that leads to sin is an entry point, an invitation. It doesn't have to be mortal sin. Now, mortal sin, you literally can get possessed, which is very rare, but you literally can get possessed on one mortal sin. And if there's a show called The Exorcist Files, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's a podcast. And I mean, you should listen to it. It's amazing. And it's a real exorcist showing these entry points.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, no one has to be nervous, because what every exorcist does is that leads back to what I've been talking about for 12 years. Go to mass, not out of habit, from the heart. Participate in the mass. I don't mean singing. If you want to sing, great. You don't want to sing, okay. I like masses that don't even have music, just so you know. The point is, participate, pray the mass, learn to pray the whole mass. Okay, it's vital for you and for other people. Go to confession on a regular basis. Well, I don't have mortal sin. Goofball, this will help you not have mortal sin.
That's right.
This
That's
will
right.
spray grace on your soul.
Venial sin unchecked, right? That's what the catechism says, I believe. Venial sin unchecked will lead to mortal sin.
Sure, absolutely, man. And Saint Padre Pio, he had 5 rules of holiness, 5 rules, and 2 of them, one was weekly confession, the other one was daily mass.
Wow.
Saint Pio said, so take a room in your house and imagine you never go to the room. Nobody's in that room. He said, leave it alone. Come back in a week. And he said, there's dust in that room, I guarantee you. He said, that's the same with your soul. Right. I tell people, how often do you wash? How often do you wash your dog, right? Or your car or whatever is real important to you? What's more important, that or your soul? So yeah, regular confession is so vital and such a gift that is underlooked greatly.
I'm assuming when you go around and speak at these parishes, you do come across kids that are, let's say, 20, 21 years old. First of all, does that happen where they approach you after a talk and want to share? Because I don't know if you get into your personal testimony at
I
these
do.
talks.
I
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Do you have people in that age group, maybe 18 to 22, that are approaching you and want to ask questions about maybe they're dealing with the same thing?
Yes.
They're attracted to the party scene. They might go on a bender, that kind of thing. Did those come up?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, all the time. And it's, well, I tell them the same thing. I said, it's just a vice. You're not a bad person. You're making a bad choice. And
Sure.
I said, it leads to emptiness is what it leads to. As you probably know, if you've done any partying any length of time, right? You end up staring at the ceiling and looking out the window and thinking an idiot you are, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever, or porn, they're all the same,
Yeah.
right? They're all the same. So I've got kids on my football team right now that they come to me and say, man, I need help. I can't stop looking at porn. And I say, no, 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 no. I said, listen, if you really want to stop, just get rid of everything that leads to porn, which means your phone. Give it to your mom. I don't care if you're 18 or 19. Give it to your mom and say, don't give this to me unless I need to text somebody. If you really want to stop, right?
Yeah.
And of course, Jesus said something along the lines, right? Rather go to heaven with one eye than go to hell with both.
Yeah, that's good.
Right?
That's good. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
asking because I think it's I don't know. It's such a simple message sometimes to be able to say, okay, I was partying, I was doing these things, and I woke up. Well, that's not the end of the story. There are so many people that woke up and then they're going back to tell kids even before they get into that scene to wake up, because it's not, how do I put it? You don't want to say, wait until they go through it, then they'll understand. We pray for the grace to have kids not go through that.
You're not supposed to go through it,
You're
right?
not supposed to go through it. Of
That's
course
not
people go
God's
through it, but
ordained will, right?
yes.
So
What
yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, see what you're talking about. See, it's called overcome an objection before it comes up, essentially, if you will. And I think the greatest thing and I need to do this again with my kids. There's a show called Intervention,
Yes.
and I think it's great for them to see the downside. Does it mean they'll never do it? No, there's no guarantees because you become who you hang around. It only takes
Yep.
once. I had a guy I never was around drugs my entire life, and I didn't smoke weed until I was 24, and from the time I was 24 to 26, there's almost nothing I didn't try outside of heroin. At the time, there wasn't this crazy fentanyl, but it all started with opening the Pandora's box, right? Trying the weed. Somebody in the bottom of the basement of the bar, famous bar at Ohio State. The owner brought me down to the bar, and I was a bouncer, and they were doing a drug exchange, and they pulled out cocaine, and I didn't know anything about it. And the first time I said no. The second time I said I'll try it. And once that happened, I was in trouble because I loved it. And it's always great at first, just like all sin. It looks really good and feels good, and boy, is it a trap. It's such a definition of Satan. It just is. It's going to feel and look good, right? And then it just puts you on a dark, dark road. You know, I mean, I got so heavily addicted. Um, I mean, I was the idea that I'm talking at Catholic churches and I have a family, you know, because like you said, other people have a great testimony. They stayed away from that stuff.
Yeah.
They were given the wisdom, the grace, and the strength to not make bad decisions. But somehow God says, I'll choose who I wish to deliver a message.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was kind of my point. So if the person had the grace at the age of 18 and they start working for the church from 18 to 26, I mean, think of what can be done in those 8 years. Of course, he can redeem situations. I mean, shoot, I wasted a lot of years. I know we talked about that actually. But I just find it that we should talk about that more, like praying for the grace for those kids to not even obviously go through that and be able to serve the church early on. Even if someone said, wow, that's wishful thinking, I don't really care. We should certainly pray for that more. And when everyone's talking about the deterioration of the culture and TikTok and all these things that previous generations didn't have, all the more reason to pray that there will be an army of kids that don't have to go through this crap and can serve the church, serve the kingdom.
Absolutely. The power of our prayers is unmistakable. The highest prayer that exists is the Mass. People say, well, pray about it, pray about it. And I'm like, of course. Now remember, the highest prayer that exists is the Mass. So if you can and have opportunity for the body of Christ, go to daily Mass, right? There's no higher prayer. There's no better way to bring all of these prayers to the altar. And but you know, I look at it and I go, somehow I've got 3 kids, and my 22-year-old, he went to Net Ministry. And I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. My wife found out about it. I thought he should get started with his career. He wanted to go. Okay. He went 9 months, came back another 9 months. And it's helped him own his faith. He's not a perfect kid. He's still got all the things coming at him,
Sure.
especially with the portal of the phone.
Sure.
Right. And once those addictions start, I mean, I was just up with a priest. I think it was in Massachusetts, and he also does exorcism. And I spent the weekend with him. I did a couple talks there, and he said he's a big believer in regular confession.
Yeah.
And so he said 100% of the teenagers that I deal with in confession are addicted to porn. And you can be all you want to protect them, and you should, but it only takes one time.
Yeah.
And when that happens, man, it is the same, because I know drug addiction well. It's exactly the same deal, right? You know, I mean, same with the video game addiction, you know. But yeah, electronics, man.
Yeah.
Electronics.
Yeah. Or the statement, I could stop at any time. That's just such a classic comment. I could stop, but I choose not to. You know, that whole thing.
Well, I would never, people would say it to me, I would say it's, of course, foolishness. And
Of
anybody who's
course.
got
Yeah.
any addiction that says I'm not really tempted anymore, I say, oh boy, now you're in dangerous water. Because if you put yourself, excuse me, if you put yourself in the wrong situation,
Yep.
and then when you get, like Paul says, be careful, you know, unless you fall, you know, you think you're so strong, you know, and Paul says, when you're weak, you're strong. So, you know, as we know, if you've ever gone out and went drunk and you go, oh my gosh, I'll never do it again. I'll listen to anything you say. I'll never make that mistake again. Or maybe someone messed up and cheated on their wife or whatever. I'm sorry. Because when you're weak, when you're down, you'll listen to anybody. But when things are going good, you've got it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
No,
dangerous
it's
place.
yeah, I still what you said, the statistic there about the teenagers, that's well, back to my point a few minutes ago, all the more reason to pray. And my goodness,
Sure.
what a disaster. What a trap that is.
Yeah.
Um, I also wanted to ask you about if you can go to just a typical ministry when you go to these parishes. You are obviously giving us a broad overview of what you discuss.
Mhm.
Can you give go into a specific moment in the talk? Does it change each time before I ask this question? Does the presentation change greatly?
A little bit.
Little bit?
A little bit. Little bit.
Can you go into one moment, one portion of the presentation that you find to be the most powerful as it relates to people responding, if you follow me?
Yeah. And this truly, I mean, just because it's a visual thing, Eddie,
Yeah.
there are so, I mean, Brian, who connected us, Truck Brother, will tell you, literally people will sit there for 2 hours and not move. Now I take a break normally after about an hour, but I mean, literally not move because it's a visual deal, right? I think watching the lady experience the stigmata is riveting. No one's breathing. I mean, they are, but you wouldn't know it to watch this on the big screen and to see what led up to that and after that. Okay. So I think that's a moment. I information wise, in the last couple of years, as it's evolved, as I've understood that the graces at Mass, you could go to Mass and I can go to Mass, and it could be a much more powerful Mass for me than it was for you. It's efficacious in nature. And so when I go through how to pray the Mass, even for the core, even for the regulars, I think I see it's very, very enlightening for them. When I say, what's the difference between Eucharistic prayer 1 and Eucharistic prayer 4? And I get deer in headlights, right? Well, I'm not sure, right? Could you pray Eucharistic prayer 4 right now? And I'm talking to the prayer lady. No. So don't you think it would make sense to have those prayers in front of you where you could pray it with the priest? And so I think those moments, without question, and I saw your reaction, but without question, when I show the stigmata, the wounds of St. Padre Pio, and I talk about how he spent 10, 15 hours a day in confession, and then I talk about his 5 rules of holiness. And when I show the slide where he says that you should go to confession every week, that's a what, you know? But I think it makes sense. People, we've heard in the physical world, if you're over 40, I guess, you've heard an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Maybe you've heard that saying. Well, if that's true in the physical world, why not the spiritual world? And so the concept of regularly going to confession for the sanctifying, the sacramental grace that you receive in order that you could pursue holiness and avoid evil.
Yes.
I think that's a big one for people. And that alone, Eddie, I mean, every church I go to, if I follow up and find out what happened the 2 weeks following, they talk about the confession lines being through the roof, right? Yeah. The adoration chapels are filled up. So holy hour is going to fill up if that's the thing at that parish. Confession lines, daily Mass is going to increase. Definitely weekend Mass, and participation in the parish is going to increase. That's for sure. I've got about, I'm not just saying that. I got about probably 10,000 feedback forms over the last 12 years. So I know what happens, right? Because I ask, how is this going to impact you over the next 12 months? What you just heard, right? And it's always pretty much the same. I'm not going to miss Mass. I believe Jesus Christ is alive in the Holy Eucharist. I'm going to confession tomorrow. I'm going to get plugged in, right? Yeah. I'm actually going to get involved in my faith, kind of thing.
No, that's fantastic to hear. You mentioned the ignorance earlier. I think you were talking about, I think we were talking about the Protestant paradigm as well. You were saying not stupid, but ignorant, or maybe you were talking about the Catholics. Either way, it applies to both. Everyone. In other words, there are so many Catholics, they don't know until they know. So the Protestant that's exploring Catholicism, their eyes are open. Oh my goodness, how did I miss this? I've heard that comment, right? Sure. So then you have Catholics, cradle Catholics. They go to a presentation like yours, or they go to some other presentation or a men's conference. You have no idea, right? They come away and they say, I don't believe I missed this.
All the time.
All the time. So rather than, I think we get so negative about like, how could people not see this? And it's right in front of you. We should be celebrating the fact that there are people dramatically being changed because the lay faithful and the priests, of course, but in regard to what you do, the lay faithful are getting out there and teaching and talking and being willing to share their story. So I think, it's just beautiful. It gets me fired up every time I hear it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is exactly what you described happens. In fact, the number one comment that I receive all the time is, how come I've never heard of this? This is unbelievable. How could anybody not be Catholic after this? Right? Now, the answer is because it all depends where you're at in life.
Yes.
And people ask me, what about the atheist? Well, they're going to be disturbed,
Sure.
as you might expect. If you bring light in a dark room, right, the bad things are going to flee. They don't like it, right? So if you talk about a fallen away Catholic who thinks his parents were overly religious and doesn't want to hear about this quote unquote crap anymore, and they're drugged to a presentation, they're not going to go, oh my gosh, I see, Mom, now I should come back. But it does plant something in them that they will have to, a seed that could bloom later, right? But
just
you
like you with
bring,
Scott Hahn, just with like you, what you were saying initially about Scott Hahn and his
that's
story.
right.
Go ahead.
That's right. Yeah. But you bring somebody that is considers himself Catholic, not overly plugged in, maybe doesn't go to mass every week. It's going to be life changing, like life changing. I'm not overstating. I actually have on my form, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did this impact you? 10 being life changing, 1 whatever, and those people will circle 10 plus, right? Life changing.
Beautiful.
And again, not because of me, because I'm privileged to share this information, but the way I'm able to convey it and show it, it's overwhelming information. And that's just, I don't know how else to say it. Brian, a friend of both of ours, he would say, you can't plant on packed soil. You can't plant on packed soil. One of his favorite things to say. And he says, so Tim, what you're doing is, by God's grace, you're coming in with a bulldozer and you're tilling the soil. And that's what happens. And it's almost really called pre-evangelization, because people don't want to be catechized unless they've first been evangelized.
Wow.
Now we blow it up. Boom. Now you bring in the Augustine Institute with Formed and wherever else they have, and people are like, where? Give me more. Give me more. You're like, it's been here the whole time, but they haven't been hit over the head. Yeah.
Very good. Tim, is there anything else you want to add? That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh no, I would say one more thing. Is that if you could get, if your listeners get a hold of me, 2 things. I'd love to come to a parish. I don't charge anything. We do it, man. So get a hold of me through my website, youshallbelieve.com. But also, I'm making a major motion picture for the same reason I go to parishes. And everybody would say, how come I've never heard of this? And I would say, because there hasn't been a movie. So now I'm making a major motion picture. As of right now, the working title is The Exorcist from Wall Street. It's based on a true story. It's not going to be a horror film. It's not going to be sensational crap. It's going to be better than Nefarious. Even I like Nefarious. And it's going to be nowhere near that crap of the Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe. But it's going to show people the ordinary activity of the enemy and evil. And it's going to lead them to a solution they've never thought about: the Catholic Church. Through the eyes of a priest who, when he was 11, was molested by a priest. He ran from God. He went off to Wall Street. He was an investment banker. He literally launched Jennifer Lopez's clothing line. He was hanging out with Clooney and Brad Pitt and living a lavish lifestyle. And through a whole conversion, he became a priest at the age of 49, and he's the exorcist for a diocese. He's a friend of mine. And it's going to be showing how someone who's broken, God can reach his hand in there and pull him out. And the $100 million question that's going to be answered is, why would somebody molested by a priest become a priest?
Yep.
And the answer is obvious for you and I.
Yeah.
because it's true. And a few bad apples has nothing to do. You don't quit sports because there's bad people in sports. And the reality of it is Jesus Christ is there, truly present. The sacrament is valid. And it's not about entertainment. It's just about reality and truth. Anybody who likes truth should be Catholic.
Yeah. Well said, Tim. Well said. Great. Well, send me any links that are applicable and I will put it in the description, and I'll be praying for you and your family for sure.
You too, brother.
I appreciate
you too, brother.
I appreciate
God bless you. Can't wait to meet you in person, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to have something out here in Idaho. So we'll see.
Right.
We'll see
what happens. We'll do it next month. I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay. Right on, man. Let's do it.
Brother.
All right.
Let's go.
Until next time, everyone, take care and God bless. Bye.